Hello and welcome to another episode of R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, editor-in-chief, and today we're discussing cat response and its evolution. Today's special guest is Carmen Coleman. She's the manager of operation initiatives for Service Master Restore and Clean. So, without any more delay, please welcome Carmen.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
You are so welcome. I'm glad you're here. We have a lot in store for this episode today, and we're going to talk about some important relationships that you have, but also your guys' take on cat events and technology and everything in between. So, how is technology like drones? I think that one is kind of that's being talked about a little bit more. AI, of course. Anything else outside of that? How are those reshaping the way restoration teams respond to larger scale disasters such as fire, flood, and hurricanes?
Well, the technology advancements have just been incredible. I think about my first CAT event, which was a few months after I started with the company several years ago. And it was spreadsheets and hoping someone had a cell reception, et cetera. And we moved to today and the advances in technology, as you said, from the use of drones. Uh, I mean, this is great. This is a great way for us to get eyes on a property even before the roads become accessible. So we have our commercial clients, of course, and then we have insurance carrier partners, and we can get eyes on a commercial client's property well before we can get in. That allows us to go ahead and prepare for any ancillary services. You know, do we need generators? Does the property need to be secured? It helps us honestly expand our resources because we know, okay, we need to initially send in this amount or this amount. So that the technology from things like Power BI, doing some data and making it pretty, but yeah, giving us access to data that we can speak to in meetings. Our partners, such as Monarch and forecasting, they definitely use a lot of technology that's been helpful to us. The change is just amazing. Even Starlink, their use of AI. We encourage our franchisees, our internal corporate commercial team, use Starlink now in these areas where in the past, you hoped that disposable phone that you bought at Walmart was going to, get you there. So these are all things that have just made the industry actually better serve. Whether it's a commercial property, insurance carriers, I think has really upped our ability to serve, which is great because it coincides with the changes we're seeing in weather patterns. More intense, and in some cases, except for maybe this year, more frequent events. So if we have multiple local flooding events, let's say, going on in parts of the country, we're able to better align resources to those events. So I love the updates in technology. And I was just thinking, wow, back when Colorado Springs flooded in 2013, had we had some of the resources we do now, I would have probably slept more.
I would definitely say we're more efficient now, right? And to think that that
Absolutely.
was, less than, 20 years ago,
Mhm.
it's wild because 2013 for some of us seems like it was yesterday, you know? I think actually for most of us, it seems like, wow, time is really flying. And just those changes have helped us immensely. It levels up our customer service, the way our team communicates and coordinates things. We don't even have to really be boots on the ground for us to assess and say, okay, here's what we need to deploy. It allows us to not really go out there and then say, okay, we need to go back and now realign things. You're able to be more effective and save a lot of time, right? I think that's the other thing is,
Absolutely.
time is of the essence during these situations. And for your to your point, hey, you could have slept more in 2013 had you had that technology, right? And sleep is very
Absolutely.
important. I think that's one of those things that's very underrated in what we do, right? I know plenty of people who have slept in vehicles, slept on the side of the road. I mean, which sometimes
Yes.
means you don't shower for days, like the stuff that we face every day, to get that sleep back would be amazing. You would have functioned a little bit higher, right? Probably would have had more
Yep.
energy. So it's
Been a
very
little more
interesting.
patient. Yeah.
A little more patient. Exactly. So with that being said, what kind of trends do you see emerging and workforce mobilization and just logistics overall with these CAT events that we're seeing, especially to your point when multiple things are happening, right?
Mhm.
I think we saw that this year. We started the year with fires and then floods came shortly after.
Yeah.
And it's just been really wild. So what do you see kind of emerging to help us just mobilize and be logistically sound?
I do think that being able to better forecast landfall or better forecast how a wildfire may expand, where it may expand, all of those things are critical. Again, as we discussed drone technology, being able to take data from past events and integrate that into how it may have impacted our past customers. I think that for every mitigation company, um, it is essential. You can't spread resources, just throw a dart at a map and say, okay, yeah, we're flooding in Wisconsin, but Arizona's got some wildfires going. Let's just split it up. Resources are finite. I'd love to say that we all have unlimited resources, but they're finite. And so, with that, if we're able to use technology, use whether it's our forecasting partner like Monarch, and they do a lot of data-driven information that they get to us, or drones, or Starlink, or any of those things, in conjunction, of course, with just old fashioned, hey, this is our experience, this is what we know, put that together. If those are being utilized, we will get better across the industry. We will respond faster and, be better partners to our customers.
100%. I will definitely say leveraging the partnerships in this industry, they make you grow leaps and bounds where you would otherwise be if you didn't have them, right? And I think it's really important
Absolutely.
to we're not meteorologists, right? So
No.
to have that extension of our team is detrimental, right? Especially where we've seen how weather events aren't really in season anymore. It feels like it's really weird, for example, I'm a California native and fire season generally is not in January. But the lack of
Exactly.
rainfall and the heavy winds and just the perfect conditions, unfortunately, if you will, really showed us that while we were thinking fire season was going to be closer to the summer, we had no idea, right? And even with the flooding, we
Hmm.
know that we get a lot of rain in the spring, but Texas and I mean New Mexico, Arizona, I think even Milwaukee flooded.
Yes.
Regions that really don't see that type of activity and frequently, I think Arizona's flooded quite a few times. I think California's had some flooding this year. And it's like, wow,
Yes.
no one predicted that, right? No one thought we were going to see this crazy amount of rain. The hurricane activity on the western side of the country, I don't think anybody
Yes.
thought was going to happen, where we were all looking towards the eastern side of the country. And so, it's just very interesting to see how all of that has played out because n now we're like, is there really a season? I mean, yes, kind of, but things can happen outside of those said seasons.
Absolutely.
And so it's extremely important to understand what the climate change is really looking like. And so, how is climate change influencing the frequency and severity of these catastrophic
Mhm.
events? And what does that mean for the future of the restoration industry and their readiness and scalability, which I think, again, leaning on the partnerships will help the scaling side and the readiness side.
Yes.
But, what are your thoughts on that?
As I have been able to work with those who have been with this company and in this industry for a lot of years, longer than I have, as well as with like Monarch and the forecasting, there's no doubt that climate change is impacting cat events. They're more intense, they're lasting longer, more frequency, and discussing this and looking at some data. So in the 80s, there was an average of 82 days between $2 billion disasters, right? Then you go to 2023, 2024, that number dropped to like 12 days between billion-dollar disasters. The rainfall rates are getting heavier, wildfires are spreading faster, and hurricanes are, you know, spreading more rapidly. You look at this last hurricane that impacted Jamaica, et cetera, just the way that storm gathered strength so quickly, but it's the warming of the waters, all these things are coming together. But it landed at a Cat 5, incredible strength, and kept up strength going through, dropped, picked up again. Well, let me hit Cuba as a Category 3. We didn't see that, 10 years ago. Um, so I think it is undeniable. As you said, there's really not a season anymore. Uh, Technically, hurricane season isn't over. But at this point, if a hurricane landed in December, I don't think any of us would be real surprised, right? Normally, you don't see a hurricane after around this time in November. And in the past few years, we've had some stretching of how long the impact is. So I think if we as an industry make sure that we pay attention to these trends, and I think most mitigation companies are, I know we are, paying attention to these trends, using really good, solid information, forecasting, et cetera, to plan. We've got to change with the trends. We've got to accept it. As you said, the wildfires didn't happen in the summer or the fall. Hey, it happened in January. We got to plan for that, and we did. So we moved forward. We had a plan for that, had a prediction for it, and worked with it. When you have an event in California, in another event, let's say along the coast of the Carolinas, you have to be prepared for that. And knowing that this is likely to happen at this intensity, I'm going to make sure that we get our resources aligned accordingly and assure, a lot of our local franchisees in the market, it's easy to get overwhelmed. And to assure that local franchise, hey, we see it coming. We have a plan. We have people on the way. We're going to help you through this. Those are all things that make a difference. And I think we as an industry are doing pretty well and ensuring that we stay up on this and that we're being a valuable partner. Like I said, whether it's commercial clients, insurance carriers, some cases each other, right?
Yeah. And I will definitely say to like you had some great points in there and like we're seeing seasons stretch, we're even seeing seasons kind of change and it's making us as an industry, to your point, make some very big changes and really take a second and look at any data or lean on our partnerships to understand what is the weather looking like? How is it changing? Who could be affected? And I think, we've seen 2 years back to back of Cat 5 hurricanes.
Hmm.
And last year was the strongest, and now this year is the strongest recorded. So that's a little scary thinking about 26, right? Just the way the last couple of years have been. I think it's definitely very eye-opening. Yes, it didn't hit us in the States, but there are still recovery efforts that have to happen in Jamaica
Yes.
and Cuba. And, there may be times where we have to go to other countries or to help out because we just have that specialty here. I think it's really important for us to learn from what we're seeing in other situations that maybe don't directly impact us. For example, Jamaica and Cuba and
Yes.
everybody else that was affected. I mean, even look at Alaska. They had those surges left over from that typhoon, and that
Yeah.
was a couple of weeks ago. And then we just had this hurricane happen. Maybe it was 12 days. I'll have to go back and look.
It
Um,
was close.
Very close. I would definitely say it's very close to your point, going from 80 something days to 12 you said in the 80s, that's catastrophic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Our work here is extremely important. Us preparing our communities is also another layer of things, and we can help with that when we leverage data and things like that. So my next question to you is, what role will data play, such as predictive modeling and real-time analytics, play in improving our response outcomes for said catastrophic events?
Yeah, I think first of all, some people are a little uncomfortable thinking AI is going to replace people. Um, the way I look at it, the way we look at it as an organization is AI is a partner almost and expanding our capacity. So when we look at the future of it, things change so quickly. Drone technology, for instance, um, Starlink, different products that roll out, different systems. In 6 months, we'll probably see more improvements in technology. The way that I see it impacting the future is we have to continue to grow with the technology as it grows. We can't push away from it. You have to embrace it because I will say this, it has made us better and it has made us able to be better partners for our clients. And that's the biggest factor. We can't be afraid of it. We have to utilize it and use it as a tool for us to get better. Again, it's not, I don't think it's going to replace people, but things that it took us spreadsheets and doing a pivot table and all this back in the day, when you're drowning in paper, you got your, map out and you're like doing dots. I think it's going to roll here. You think about all the time saved and not doing that, it's like within a very short amount of time, you can have data at your fingertips.
Mhm.
One example I'm going to use is last year, Hurricane Helene. We weren't certain, the various forecasting partners we used, there's no certainty when a hurricane is going to hit, where it's going to land, right? We actually had a really good sense because uh, some areas were saying, maybe Destin, Florida might be impacted. We got really, really good direction, like I said, from Monarch on where that hurricane was expected to land, where Helene was expected to land. And down to the city, they were dead on. So then as we looked at the path of Helene and how it would impact, um, we're used to in the past hurricanes going north and having some impact, but they sounded the alarm for us and they're like, Asheville, Greenville, South Carolina, those areas are going to see significant flooding. So you got the significant flooding. Discuss the age of the trees, the patterns, the state of the vegetation. And, they use AI to gather a lot of this, but also, they're seasoned meteorologists. So they kind of used their insight. And we were able to take teams that were mobilizing from California and staging and say, hey, you know what? I need you in the Carolinas. So conventional wisdom, some would have said, let's stack everybody in Florida, right?
Yeah.
This is where it's going to hit. Da, da, da. But the technology, the data that we received, the insights we received allowed us to make sure that we had a good presence in the Carolinas, especially that portion of the Carolinas. And it was significant, as we now know. We were able to get in there and get in there quickly because we weren't kind of guessing
Yeah.
at where would be the best place to put our resources. So I think in the future, if we continue to look at now, some things may get weird and suddenly, oh no, it's not Asheville, it's going to be Charlotte. That may happen, but so far, the accuracy is amazing. The models that are being used now are incredible, and we just have to keep trusting the data along with experience and common sense, and use those things to move forward. And it impacts not just our mobilization, it impacts our products team so that they know, what may be needed. Had to do an exercise with them earlier this year, preparing for hurricane season, looking at past data and trends, et cetera. It impacts our team that supplies the ancillary services, generators, et cetera. It starts with not just preparing at that moment or 2 weeks ahead of time, but having the equipment, the all the resources that you need, even looking at potential housing, in certain areas. So I like to say that preparing for CAT is a year-long thing because it is. Whether it's a fire, flood, feast or famine, right? It's a year-long thing. But when you have information about past trends, et cetera, that you can use in those conversations, it's the time it has saved has just been amazing. I sit back now and I'm like, we really used to do that.
What I will definitely say to your point, like the accuracy, the insights, we have to remember Monarch, and other partners, they have an additional network with resources where they're actually allowed to compare that data before they ever bring it back to us, right? Just like we do,
Yes.
right? We compare notes, we compare response tactics and processes, products, procedures, all of that before we ever go out and mobilize, to your point. And so I think the types of things that we're seeing and the advances that we're seeing, to your point, they will not replace us. They will actually help us and influence our response time and our preparedness, right? If we don't have those types of insights, we would be reactionary. We would be reacting to everything instead of being proactive. And thankfully, we're in the state of actually being able to your point, plan for a year and then make easier pivots as needed based on the data that we're being provided or we're collecting. And that's catastrophic for those types of events. To your point, you know, what was that? 12 years ago, I guess now, today, almost 13 years ago, how much would that have influenced you and what you understood? I mean, immensely, right? Things would have
Yes.
gone completely different. And to your point, taking the time of collecting points, making a pivot table, I mean, there's data entry and then there's a review process. And,
Mhm.
it's a long time, it's not instant. And so I think we need to really embrace the technology and software that we're seeing. And not everything's going to work for our business, right? It might not work now, but maybe it works in 5 years. And I think with that, we're able to make an even bigger impact than we have ever before because of the tools that we have. Starlink, man, you can get internet anywhere, you can make phone calls. I mean, you don't have to have all of these resources in these disaster areas anymore. We have generators and we have things like Starlink and we have things like Monarch and then we have our, products team, like you mentioned, they're planning way ahead to understand, hey, where should we be sending these particular things, and how many should we send? It's very proactive instead of reactive, and I think it makes our job easier, and I think it also provides a peace of mind to our consumers and those that we're
Mm,
serving. It's a scary time for them. They have no idea who
absolutely.
we are and what we do until they need us, right?
Exactly.
And so we're able to leverage this crucial thing called data and AI and software and in the networks and partnerships that we have. So with that being said, what innovations or best practices are emerging in post-disaster communication and coordination between businesses, emergency
Mm.
management, and property owners?
What we've been able to do is do case studies based on the past events, even most recent ones, how we were able to support a past event. And you said Milwaukee, that's a great example. No one expected Milwaukee and the surrounding counties to flood to that extent. We actually had a lot of mobilizers in those markets helping from our SRM, our large owners who handle large losses, to those who are taking care of our residential, our insurance carrier partners. So at the end of this, we can look at that and we can say, you know what, we anticipated a need for equipment. For instance, we had our equipment trailers out of Kansas City. They're ready for franchisees, et cetera, to utilize. After every event, if you sit down and if you evaluate honestly with yourselves, we did good in this. Yeah, we did great. Or, you know what? This is an opportunity. And had we XYZ, some of the things that we've come up with, we'll reach out like to Monarch and say, hey, is there a way to build out this model? They've never said no, and they always produce. It's like, well, yeah. Can we maybe look at a prediction uh, within certain neighborhoods, let's say? So if we sit down after every event, before everybody takes a deep breath and gets some sleep, let's sit down and let's look at what went well, what we could have done better at. And a lot of times what we could have done better at, we could have made that improvement using technology. And it's hard not to say, I'm going for my gut feeling. This is what I feel. Sometimes if the data isn't supporting my gut, maybe I need to not rely on my gut so much. But a lot of times the data and the gut go hand in hand. I feel good about that. The little chess versus poker kind of thing. But I think that's the most important thing is at the end of these events, look at what could we have done better and what resources may have been available to do better, whether it's some of our internal systems. I'll ask for anything. I'll reach out to our IT department, like, hey, can we do this? Okay, well, let me look at this. As crazy as something may sound, let's talk about it and let's see if this is something we can implement. We invested very heavily in equipment and equipment trailers using some pretty high-tech technology, et cetera. 10 years ago, it might have been like, I don't know. But because we can say we can make some pretty good predictions and get those equipment trailers there, and that will allow us to take care of customers faster. We're not waiting on equipment. It's a good idea. 10 years ago, we might not be able to sell that. Now it's like, yeah, let's definitely invest in this. It's working. Maybe we'll have more equipment trailers. But anything that can reduce the time it takes to get to that property and help those who need help. How that works with property management companies, et cetera. We're able to sit down with these companies, reference the case studies. This is, the technology we have available. This is the knowledge we have available. This is our network because we have an incredible network of franchisees. This is what we can bring to the table. All of these things are important and they'll continue to be more important uh, because if I'm a property management company, if I'm a representative of an insurance company, I want you to assure me that I'm going to be taken care of. I need some assurance. We were looking at polar vortex, for instance, another 2013 polar vortex, and where that impacted, how it impacted, and how we supported it. Then we looked at another pretty intense polar vortex. I think we changed the Arctic freeze at that point, and that was in 2021. 13 states impacted, primarily Texas. Then we looked at the Arctic freeze. I think we're calling it that. I think it was around 2024, 2023, because I was on vacation. And heavily impacted was Washington and Oregon. So as we look at how these things have changed, polar vortex used to really be kind of the uh, eastern half of the country type of thing. Now it's all over the place. But because we have better predictive models, we're not scrambling and saying, oh, ooh, Washington is in a polar vortex, not DC. What is happening? We can act accordingly.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand those types of things where, it's almost like it's being picked up and moved.
Yeah.
But also, I think sometimes people don't think about the freeze aspect of things, right? And that's actually really big. We've seen a couple of years that have been catastrophic. To your point, Texas. Holy
Oh, yeah.
smokes. I mean, they lost resources for days, and I think even internet was like weeks. It was
Yes.
wild, and no one was really prepared for that. They didn't have the means like, the northern part of the country generally
Hmm.
has. Most people had probably never experienced that in their life, and well, that was their first time, and I'm sure that it was very scary for them. Not a lot of people have driven
Yes.
in that weather, not have had power for days. It's very interesting to see how it is moving around. Oregon and Washington, I know they get really cold, but for the whole state to be affected is crazy, right?
Yes.
That's like here, I'm in Nevada, and about 45 minutes from here, they get snow and stuff, right? Their elevation is higher, but I think we had snow here in 2019 or something like that, and I mean, no one really knew how to act, like, because the last time there was snow like that was in 2008. So we're talking an
Yeah.
11-year kind of gap. And it was just very interesting to see how we responded. Granted, we didn't freeze, but people couldn't drive.
Yeah.
Places of business had to close because they couldn't get their staff to come or, whatever the case may be. And I think, by leveraging the partnerships and the software and all those things that we have, we'll be able to make a greater impact and, communicate too to our customers and tell them, hey, we have this forecast or this prediction. We really want you to understand what this could mean for you guys. Because those partnerships that you have with Monarch and maybe Starlink and whoever else, you also have the consumer side of partnerships, right? Property
Yes.
owners, property management, and things like that, where we actually kind of are like playing telephone, I guess, if you will, but
Yeah.
a constructive version of telephone because we know how telephone generally happens. Um, but I think it's really important to kind of understand how we are evolving and how we are making
Yes.
a difference, and there is change, and we can't ignore the change. I think that's the other thing is we simply just cannot ignore the change. Um,
Yes.
I think we've learned a lot, especially in 2025. Wild to say that 2025 is coming to a close, but I think we've definitely learned quite a bit in 2024 as well. But you've answered so many questions. Do you have any final thoughts for those listening?
You know, I think that what we do is incredibly important, of course. And as you said, uh, it's not like we're DoorDash or something like that. It's, you know, no one really wants to need us, but when they need us, it is just critical that we're able to deliver. So much is psychological as well as actual, damage, especially on the residential side. And giving that assurance and then delivering on it, that we can take care of it. And in the spirit of bizarre, what wasn't on my bingo card, and really my bingo card is pretty open these days because of all the events, but we had the California wildfires, right? In January, it was not on my bingo card for there to be wildfires in the Carolinas and these other places. But because we had really enhanced our processes very quickly during the California fires, we were able to transition that to these other areas. So I think as long as we continue as an industry to use predictive models to take really good and best practices and expand those in areas you never thought you would have. Yeah, we can do that here. Uh, assure property management companies, assure insurance carriers, et cetera, that we're ready. We're ready. No one wants you to have a catastrophic event. But what we do want is for credible, honest people to do a great job in getting you back to where you need to be. And
100%.
yeah, yeah. So that's my thing. I'm looking forward to what we're going to build next as we close 2025. I'm not saying that I believe there's not going to be anything else. Like I said, we could have a hurricane in December. Uh, Forecasts are looking like we may have another Arctic event, but we'll be ready for it. And then we'll see what 2026 holds.
Yes, and I would definitely say to your point, the year is not over.
No.
There are 2 months left. We're in the final 2 months of the year, and we know that if we ever get comfortable, Mother Nature always has something in store for us, right? And I think we're seeing already
Absolutely.
colder temperatures, especially affecting like Florida and things like that. So
Yes.
if that trend continues, to your point, we could see some maybe another polar vortex, Arctic freeze, and I think that it's really important that we have these conversations because that impacts us all one way or another. And we'll see what the last 2 months of this year
Yes.
holds for us. Thank you for all that you guys do. We really appreciate all that you guys do, and
Oh, thank you.
I hope you have a very happy holiday season. And for all of you watching, thank you for tuning into this episode of Ask the Expert. We'll see you on the next one.